Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neil Pandian. I'm joined with my colleague, Khalid Sefian. What we wanted to do this afternoon, we wanted to take a slightly different approach to some of the things that you would have heard over the last couple of days. We wanted to talk about how we can make DevSecOps more adoptable for developers. Because we see this as a big challenge, and we thought maybe if we talk to you a bit more about that, and some of the things that you want to think about back in your own organization, they may be able to help you. So it's not just the tooling aspect, but all the other components that go behind that. So Khalid, I want to talk to you today about how can we make DevSecOps more adoptable for developers. What kind of things do you think we should be focusing on?
Well, I think there are about 5 key roles that you really need to think about, and these are quite an important thing to have as part of your framework. The first is to really understand the role of the developer and the key stakeholders as well. The roles and responsibility is a really important part of any DevSecOps framework that you want to put in place. And you really need to have a good, solid understanding of that before you get started. The other would be understanding also of the capability of your tools, based against your maturity, based against your business priorities, and based against your business requirements and your business outcomes. These are also quite important within any DevSecOps framework. Another thing to really consider is integration. Whenever you're looking at any AppSec program or DevSecOps framework, your software development lifecycle, how do you integrate across that? When you're looking at IDE environments, the tools that you're using, you need to look at today and what's coming tomorrow, the unknown. So we really need to consider something that's going to be quite easy to integrate with and work across the whole CI/CD pipeline. We're seeing a lot of developers using multi-cloud. So multi-cloud use has to be something that's quite easy for developers as well. So we really need to consider about that area around the multi-cloud approach. And the other thing is something that's quick and easy to deploy, and that has a good investment value to an organization. So we don't want to see something that's going to cost quite significantly more than the organization can afford. So low investment.
Interesting. So we're going to dive into those 5 areas in Khalid, and we've got Michael Snowden, who's been kind enough to do a recording for us to actually walk us through how we can actually achieve some of the things that you mentioned. So we're going to start off with who you are, and this is an interesting area because let's see who we are and what role that we play.
Now let's go to a very quick on who I think you might be. Generally speaking, when I talk to my customers, people fall into one of 3 camps. Either A, you're a software developer or you're a software engineer, and you're concerned about getting quality results. So this way you know what it is that you need to fix, and also getting the recommended information on how to remediate the vulnerabilities. If you're an engineer that's previously used other application security testing tools, something else you might be concerned with is getting a low number of false positives. So this way you're not wasting your time on things that aren't really issues. If you're the DevOps guy, you're probably concerned about getting a solution and a tool that's easy to deploy, manage, and maintain. And also something that is quite rock solid, because Lord knows you don't want to be on the phone with tech support at 2 a.m. just because something broke. And if you're a person that's in a management level position, like maybe a build manager or maybe a C-level exec, like a CISO, then you're concerned about making sure that the tools that are being used are easily adopted by the team at large, and also that you're getting meaningful data, so this way you can make the important decisions that need to be made. And also making sure that you have some peace of mind, knowing that the applications being developed within your environment are adhering to whatever regulations that need to be adhered to.
So interesting points there. You talked about earlier about the role of the developer and other key stakeholders. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so Michael here has talked about a number of different persona types. And it's really important to have a good understanding of what the different requirements are across the DevSecOps framework. When we're looking at roles and responsibilities, why is it so important? Well, we have different stakeholders where we're looking at people who have different requirements. We have different parts of the business that are working within our business framework. So we have to have a lot of empathy around a good DevSecOps framework to incorporate a good security culture. And when we're looking at people with different requirements and different types of people that we work with, we need to think about how we can become inclusive and really understand, again, what their role is, what they need in order to have a good adoption across that.
So we talk about here about how if you're a developer, there's certain meaningful results, reduce false positives. The ops guy, he needs to have something that's going to not fail, easy to deploy. and the big cheese, the security guys who look at compliance and having meaningful data to show value in the investment. So we're going to look a bit more about the tooling aspect now. So let's move on to see what Michael has to share on that side. So that's an interesting area. So tell me a bit more about having those capabilities on-prem as well as on cloud.
So it's really important for organizations to have choice. I mean, flexibility for any organization is really necessary. And you have different requirements that need different things. So when we're looking at what we can offer, there are multiple entry points. And how we can afford that within the cloud environment or on-prem to adopt what we need as an organization is critical when we're looking at the SCA needs, your SAST, your DAST, whether you're looking at mobile application security testing, and being able to speed up quickly to demonstrate how something works and incorporate that as part of our DevSecOps is quite critical as well. So it's really something that we don't want to see where people are locked out and unable to do something because of the tool sets they may have, or policies, or not even engaging with the rest of the business properly to adopt something. DevSecOps should not be exclusive to any organization in terms of not being able to adopt it properly and apply it holistically.
Kelly, I've got a question for you. So we saw SAST, DAST, SCA, MAST. Mm-hmm. Is there a right entry point to a DevSecOps program? Does it matter where you enter in from?
It really depends on where you're working from in terms of what you're doing as a business. So different organizations look at things, but for anyone that we engage with, we always say, look, it's really important to have security by design and during build. So if you're developing programs and applications and web or within the organization, then you're going to be looking at your SAST. If you're incorporating a lot of libraries, we know 80% of any application that's built is from open source libraries. So how do we scan for that as well? So it really is important to understand exactly what you're trying to work towards.
Got it. So that's important to understand that there's no right way to start. No. Very much relevant to where you are in your business and the type of environment that you operate in. Now, Michael talked a bit about some of those areas, and we mentioned about integration. So he's got a bit of a demo here on how integration is important, how we can do that with Fortify. Mm-hmm.
So, for this first demo, I'll be showing you what it's like to use our ID plugin for Visual Studio. And this can be very useful for one of the software developers and engineers out there who primarily develop .NET. Just be aware that we do have other ID plugins available for IntelliJ as well as for Eclipse. So, with this demo, I'll have Visual Studio opened up and I'll show you how to scan a solution. And go through and do some automating on the results that we report back. And at the tail end of all that, we will upload those results into a results management server that we call Fortify SSC. So here I have Visual Studio already opened up with the solution already loaded. And just so you know, I'm not going to show you what it looks like to install our plugin. It's stupid simple to do it. I mean, basically there's an exe that we provide. You double click on that exe, you click next, and then you're done with the install basically. But once you have the Fortify IDE plugin already loaded up, all you have to do is just go to your solution, right-click your solution or one of the sub-projects, and then click on Analyze the Solution.
So while this takes a bit of time to scan, I want to ask you, Khalid, why is it important for us to make the integration? Like you said, it's just an exe file, it's stupidly easy to do. You double click. Why is that important?
We don't want to have any complexity in terms of applying something towards our DevSecOps framework. The tooling needs to be, tooling needs to support a developer first model. It needs to integrate and work in line with what the developer does today. We don't want to add anything there that's unusual or different to how they operate. We want to make it intuitive and organic in terms of how they approach what they do.
So once the scan is finished and the results have loaded up in the IDE, we can see that the IDE plugin has updated the view here with a few formalized specific tasks. In the upper right-hand corner, where your solution is where it used to be, we have our analysis results. All the profile results are automatically grouped based upon their criticality level at a top level. And we have 4 criticality levels: critical, high, medium, and low. And we have an additional tab here which shows you a listing of all issues regardless of the criticality level. Also, as a primary grouping, we have things such as OAuth or PCI, CS.5, GDPR, and other things like that. So this way you can see how it is that fortified vulnerability categories map to some other regulation or policy or set of requirements. So if we click on and expand one of these folders right here, we see that we have a command injection vulnerability, and we have one instance of that vulnerability that was discovered. If I click on that issue, the code view gets updated, so this way it opens up the affected source code file, and it takes us immediately to probably the most important line within this issue. Now, the reason why I say it's the most important line for this particular issue is because sometimes there are some vulnerabilities that hold some kind of data flow. That's to say that in some instances, you could have untrusted or unvalidated input coming into your application. And for this particular vulnerability, we have untrusted or unvalidated data coming in at line 82, and it is propagating through our application by essentially being passed off through a function call, or in some other instances, it gets passed off by being concatenated into other variables. And we follow the propagation of that untrusted and unvalidated data all the way up to the point where we believe that information is being used for something it shouldn't be used for. So again, as you click through the analysis trace evidence here, do take note that we do automatically update the code view, and we take you through the lines of code as data is propagating. Down here in the bottom panel, we have our audit area. Here, you get the ability to set what you believe the analysis should be. So we have several values down here. In this case, I'm going to select exploitable. Notice that when I selected this particular analysis, over here in the analysis results panel, we can see that the status icon for this particular issue gets updated accordingly. We also have a comment area, so this way we can add in comments. And also, we have a details tab right here, so this way you can get information in terms of what a command injection vulnerability is, as an example, and what kind of impact it might have. And also, if this is your first time dealing with this type of vulnerability, we provide high-level recommendations on how you can remediate this type of vulnerability. Now that we've gone through and we've performed a scan on our source code, and we've also performed some copying here, it would probably be a very good idea to share our results with other people in our team. So we have an additional tool, it's basically a Java-based web application server that we call Fortify SSC. The purpose of this particular tool is to provide a web-based device which other people can essentially upload their scan results into. It also helps with the collaboration of auditing of scan results. So in order to upload our scan results, all we need to do is come up to extensions, Fortify, and just so you know, I've already gone through and done a bit of configuration where I pointed and configured the IDE plugin to my Fortify SSC server. But after that configuration, all you have to do is click on the Upload Block Project button, and then select the application and application version that you want to upload the results into. In this case, I'm going to upload to an application inside of SSC that I've called vulnerable.net web app version 1.0. So the upload happened fairly quickly here. And now I'm going to swing over to my SSC server. So within SSC, this is what the initial dashboard page looks like. Here you can see some high-level information in terms of what the state of my entire software portfolio is. And we get to see here a listing of our big troublemaker applications. If I go to applications, I get a full listing of all apps that I run scans for. And I'm going to go down right now very quick to the application and application version where I upload the results to. So like the ID play, we get a view here that's somewhat similar, somewhat reminiscent of what we saw with the ID play. We get a grouping of our issues based upon the criticality level. And we also have the ability to further group things based upon some other criteria, like CWE, OWASP Top 10, GDPR, and other things. Here we have command injection vulnerability that I audited, and here we can see all the same information that we saw with the IDE. We get a code snippet of the affected area of source code. We get the analysis trace evidence, and we have our audit area as well. So within the audit area, we have the ability to change the analysis, add more comments, view existing comments. We also get to see the full audit history of this particular finding. So anytime this issue has had its analysis change to some value, we get to see when it happened and who did it. And then off the info area, we get the same vulnerability detail and recommendation information that we saw previously. Also, some of the things that you can see here within SSC is that we have a reports area. So this way you can generate PDF and Word documents.
Kate, I want to ask you a couple of things there. So the Software Security Center, the SSC, what's the main role of this particular function of Fortify?
Well, we talked about having different personas. So within an organization, whether we're looking at developer groups, build managers, we're looking at security teams, project groups, delivery groups, or operations, they all have a need to, they all get visibility of how programs are tracking, projects are going, what vulnerabilities are identified. Security can verify and validate and can get involved early, much sooner. What we've seen Michael present at the moment was really a developer-first kind of approach, providing them with as much information as possible, to identify what the vulnerability is, understand what it means, and then how to work through remediating it quickly. So it's really important that we make sure that something that we provide to our developers works really well, but also for other stakeholders who need to understand what's happening within the organisation so they can get involved when they need it. Projects might need to invest more in getting something delivered sooner, engage with security sooner. Security has always been seen as a blocker because by the time something comes to them, it's too late, it's done and built, and there's a lot of time cost. But when they're involved early, they become collaborators, they become enablers, and it really empowers the whole group to work collectively together.
If you don't mind, Kelly, I'm just going to double click on some of the things you just mentioned there. I like the fact that I could identify vulnerabilities and map them to things like GDPR, PCI DSS, OS Top 10. And you mentioned about having content that would help the developer reduce the complexity of the tooling. And I like the idea that we can bring different people, different personas of the organization together through one dashboard. I like that idea. So we're going to see a bit more about how we extend that now with the next demo, where we talk about how we can use it for what you mentioned earlier about, having different cloud platforms. So we'll have a look at that now.
Okay. So for this next demo right here, we're going to be going through and configuring an existing pipeline that's kind of Azure DevOps to use the Fortify extension. So we have a project here, it's on Azure DevOps that we're going to configure. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the settings and go to service connections. And although I have an existing service connection for my SSC server, we'll create a new one. And although there is an existing option here for Fortify connections, we're going to select the generic connection. After that, we go ahead and we click next. And we're going to enter in the URL for our we swing back over to the main project, and then we go over to our pipelines, and then we're going to start ending this pipeline here. Once the YAML editor for our pipeline is loaded up, in the tasks area, we'll search for Fortify. Then we'll want to add in the Fortify Sound Code Analyzer Assessment task. And we'll need to provide a build ID, and we'll then specify the application language type. If there are also any additional options that we need to pass into the build tool that we use, we pass that in here. We specify that we want to be running a scan locally, and we also want to upload the results into SSC, so we provide that information in here as well. Then after all of that, we run the pipeline. So let's make a quick look at the job here. And I'm going to let this speed through here very quickly, just to save a little bit of time. So this is almost done. It's running the Fortify CA task, and as you can see here, the task ran successfully, and it's also able to upload our job or scan results up into our Fortify SSD server.
So that's so SSC, the Software Security Center. So that's one for Azure, and we had one earlier for on-prem.
No, we just have one.
Right.
So the value of SSC is it can be accessed by many of your business stakeholders within your organization. And if you're working within enclaves outside of your own business model, so you might have external developers or anything like that, you can again create tenancies for them and export from them and incorporate into your own development framework as well to get that visibility across.
Right. So it's one Software Security Center for multi-cloud, on-prem, all your applications, and it's very easy to navigate around that as well and look at the administration and the security through that. So I want to look at the Fortify on demand now, because that's an interesting area. Let's have a look at the demo first, and I've got some questions on that I'm going to ask you about later on.
All right, now for our last demo here, I'm going to take you through a quick walkthrough of our fully managed SaaS-based offering called Fortify on Demand. Our offering Fortify on Demand is, as I've said a few times already, it's fully managed, it's fully web-based, and when it comes to trying to perform any kind of abstract testing, such as dynamic analysis, soft composition analysis, static analysis, or mobile application security testing, all that can be performed from within your browser. Or if you have an automated CI/CD system, like either Jenkins, Azure DevOps, or some other similar system, then you can also kick off automated scans for any one of the types of abstract scanning that I mentioned before, from your pipelines. All of them, our web portal is divided out into 4 major sections. You have our applications listing, our dashboards area, our reports area, where you can generate PDF and HTML dashboard reports, and our administration area, where it has all typical admin-like functions that you would come to expect. So again, the thing I really do want to emphasize here is Fortify on Demand truly is a fully managed SaaS solution. So that means that all of the scanning infrastructure, Fortify on Demand hosts all of that infrastructure, including the front-end web portal that you're seeing here. The only thing that you as a customer would need in order to interact with our service would be either A, web browser, or B, an IDE if you're a developer and you want to be able to view the results or kick off scans directly from your code editor, or one of our many CI/CD extensions. So, actually, I lied about one thing. There are a few other areas of our service. So We do have an API Explorer where all of our REST API endpoints are documented in Swagger. We also have a tools page here, so this way you can get access to all of our client-side tools and utilities, such as our IDE plugins, CI/CD extensions, and other utilities. Our help documentation is web-based as well, and also you get access to a live chat service that operates 24/7, just in case you need any help or assistance with your tenant. So, what does it look like when you try to kick off a scan? So what you need to do first is you need to go into an application that you would have created, and then from here you would need to select on one of your application releases. In this case, this particular application called Mobile ORD only has a single application release, and you can see right here there's a nifty little obvious button here that says Start Scan. So here we can select either static or mobile scan, but if we are dealing with a web-based application, then we would be able to select either static or dynamic. For the static scan setup page, this is what it looks like, and there's only a few fields here that we need to provide information for. Likewise, the information for the dynamic scan setup page looks pretty similar, though it does request slightly different information. So once you've dialed in the settings that are appropriate for your application, all you need to do is click on the Save button, and naturally this is complaining to me here very quick, so just 1 second while I add in the required field information. Okay. So after supplying all the required information, and you click Save, you get the visual indication that your settings are valid for the most part, as far as we can tell, and the settings get saved. And then you can click on the Start Scan button, and after you click Next and you validate some of the other information here, you get to the Scan Details page, where it summarizes all the information in terms of the settings that you provided, just as a quick sanity check before you click on the Start Scan button. For right now, I'm not going to kick off a scan. For dynamic scans, all you really need to do is just provide a URL for the website that you want us to scan for you. Or alternatively, if you are wanting to perform a static analysis on your source code, instead of a URL, you would basically package up all your source code, including your third-party libraries, into a zip file, and you would upload that into the web portal here for analysis. So, after the scan completes and you want to view your results, you swing over to a different application that has just a few more findings. So here I have a static analysis scan for a Java application, and if I go into the application and then I take a look at the issues page, we see a view here that looks quite similar to what we saw with Fortify Software Security Center, as well as what we saw in the Visual Studio IDE plugin. Off on the left, we have a panel that lists off all of our issues, and we have a similar grouping system based upon our critical high, medium, and low criticality ratings, and also a group by dropdown, which allows you to essentially regroup the Fortify findings based upon some other criteria. In the center, we have the vulnerability summary information, recommendations, our code view with analysis trace evidence, and on the right-hand side, we have our audit panel. The only thing that's a little bit different with auditing inside of Fortify On Demand is that you actually have two different audit status drop-down menus. You have a developer status as well as an auditor status. Something else that's also cool with Fortify On Demand is that if for whatever reason you disagree with the default criticality rating that Fortify has provided for a finding, you can change the criticality to some other level. And of course, we still have the comments box, so this way you can add in comments. So here, the dashboard area, we have all of the typical dashboarding-like elements that you would expect. So people that are in management-like positions, they can come over here to the dashboards section, and they can get a quick high-level overview and snapshot as to the AppSec health of their entire portfolio.
So I wanted just to ask you about FOD there. So it seemed like FOD had several different components. So I've got SASDAST, I've got mobile. And did I see SSC capability in there as well?
Yes, it provides you with that single dashboard again. So some interesting points. Michael talked about how you can present the information to different stakeholders within there. And one of the questions you asked me just a moment ago was about how many SSCs do we have, right? So when you're working on our environment, the whole strength and the value around the SSC is that it's, we talk about persona-driven outcomes, right? So what is each part of the business needs? And that's part of its strength in terms of managing risk. When you have too many different dashboards and different things get lost in the noise. So when we have one dashboard that we can present to different stakeholders and they can see what's relevant to their business and how they engage, it's really a much more simplified, unified approach to putting a good program in place. Earlier, we also talked about the fact that having the right tool, understanding your maturity model, understanding what your business requirements are and the business outcomes you're working towards. So what Michael showed you here was really a lot of different things that you can touch on and you can do quite quickly with low investment, to ensure that you've got a good SecOps program in place. So there really is no reason why anyone would not be able to put in place a good DevSecOps framework at all. There's no reason for it to be excluded from your business practices.
So is FOD a good entry point if you're new to a DevSecOps program? Because it doesn't require much.
You don't have to worry about investment in hardware. You don't need a team to manage it or support it. You just need to know what you want to do. You've seen how easy it is to navigate. It's really integrated within what you work. Michael was able to demonstrate where you look at to understand some of the things they showed you. They show you what bad code looks like, gives you an idea of what good code looks like, and how to also address these issues at source code. So, so it really is intuitive, drop-down menus, so you can navigate quite easily, the way that we already work today. And when you do that, it simplifies a lot of this.
I like what you just said, if I'm outsourcing, right, I can use FOD because whoever I'm outsourcing to, they don't need to have access to my infrastructure in my network, right? I can do that through FOD. I just want to ask you about, I saw a lot of overlapping functions there. So, I was able to, there was a developer status and an auditor status with FOD. We didn't see it so much on 45 because we had all the SSC reporting. I think that's really valuable, that one dashboard where, if I'm an auditor, I can go in and have a look at how risk is being managed. So as we wrap up now, 5 key points for me to take away. What would you say to me as 5 things that I should bear in mind as a developer who wants to have a good adoption of a DevSecOps program?
So you really need to look at, understanding the roles and responsibility of your developers and your key stakeholders. We need to consider, what our tools are and how they integrate across our environments. Integration is really key across the whole CI/CD pipeline, integrated development environments and everything around that. We need to look at how we approach multi-cloud and make something very low cost and effective. End of the day, when you consider your 5 key roles, what you're really looking at doing is developing solutions that are worthy of trust in a way that reduces or actually removes friction, enables organizations to have something that's quite affordable, removes complexity, so ease of use, it's got to be simplified, and also allows you to deliver much faster because you don't want to have any delays in getting your programs out. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Khalid. Thanks, everyone. If you do have any questions, we're down at G7. We'd really love to talk to you and hear more about your interests in a DevSecOps program and how we could help you with some of the things that Khalid and I have discussed today. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.